أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. بعد توفيق الله عز وجل يعني لنا بإتمام مختصر سيرة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. After Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us success of finishing the concise presentation of the seerah of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we started around the Mawlid time, Rabi'ul Awwal, and we finished before Ramadan. So I thought inshallah to continue focusing on the life of who will be the best after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's going to be the companions, the friends of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So inshallah we will be shedding some light on some life of some of the Sahabah, and that's going to be through the book of حياة الصحابة by الرحمن, رأفت, الباشا, who is a Syrian. He was like a contemporary. He was born in 1920 and he died in 1986, if I'm not wrong. He was born in Syria. He studied in Halab for a while, and then he continued in Egypt, جامعة فؤاد الأول, now called Cairo University. And هو أديب معروف. This book by the name of SAAW, حياة الصحابة, it's advised to have it in each library. It's a concise, short, and it's also presented in a nice way. It's shedding some light on the life of Sahaba. He has also SAAW حياة التابعين and other books as well. Why do we study the life of Sahaba? Who is a Sahabi first? A Sahabi, a companion, a friend of the Prophet ﷺ, he has a definition. There is a definition for that. The definition is الصحابي هو كل من لقي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم مؤمنا به ومات على ذلك. Every person who, it's going to be hard to translate it, met the Prophet, because scholars would disagree. He should see him. Everybody who, let's say, met with the Prophet ﷺ and while believing in him and died on that. So if somebody lived in the time of the Nabi ﷺ or met with him and he was not mu'min during his life, he accepted Islam later on, he's not going to be called Sahaba. Like if somebody accepted Islam in the time of Abu Bakr, even though he lived with the Nabi ﷺ but he was kafir, that's not going to be Sahaba. He should also die on Iman, as far as we know, to be called Sahabi. Some hypocrites or some murtadun, somebody abandoned Islam or abstained from Islam after that, he's not going to be called Sahabi. That's the definition of Sahabi. Sahabi, هو من لقي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, everybody met the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم during his life, ولو مرة, even though it's one time, like not necessarily living with him, even though you saw him one time, مؤمنا به, while believing in him, and died on that. الصحابة ذكرهم الله عز وجل. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised the Sahaba in the Quran. قال والسابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين اتبعوهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه. The early سابقون, the forerunners من المهاجرين والأنصار, of the immigrants and the supporters, والذين اتبعوهم, and those who followed them. Followed whom? Followed the Sahaba, the early, especially the early ones of them. والذين اتبعوهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم. So those and everybody who followed them in a good way, in a good manner, Allah is pleased with them. That's Allah talking about the Sahaba. So many other ayat لبعض المفسرين وكذا. يقول في موضوع عبد الله بن عباس والذين يتلونه حق تلاوته. Those we give them the book, they recited it as it should be recited, like they recited and they implemented. It's talking about Sahaba. الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله. Those who believe and they have tranquility, peace in their heart with that faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's talking also about Sahaba. Yes, it's talking about believers as well, but it's about Sahaba in the first place. Also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Fath في قبل نهايتها محمد رسول الله والذين معه, and then he described them as رحماء بينهم شداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم, such an Allah has described praised Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and those with him. He's talking about the Sahaba. Talking about the ahadith, so many ahadith the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam talked to us about the virtues, fada'il al-Sahaba, the virtues of the Sahaba. Can anybody quote one of them?
They're like the stars in the sky.
That's one hadith. They are like the stars. You follow any one of them and you should be guided. Even though the hadith is not that authentic, he's talking about them as stars in another hadith. But we have so many authentic hadith. One of them is لا تسبوا أصحابي فلو أن أحدكم أنفق مثل أحد ذهبا ما بلغ أو ما أدرك مد أحدهم ولا نصيفه. Do not even talk about ashabi or my friends or my companions. Do not like talk bad about them or insult them, because by Allah, if any one of you would have a mountain like Uhud of gold and he spend it for the cause of Allah, it would not be equal or even close to mud ahadihim, to what they spend for the sake of Allah, like mud, which is like a handful of food or something that they spend, or even half of that. That's not going to be equal. Why? Because they spent it when everybody was against Islam. They spent it when they were in so much need for it. They believed in Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam so early. They believed in Allah. They established Islam. Because of their faith, Islam was established by the will of Allah. Again, why do we study their lives? Number one, Allah praised them and said, those who followed them will be those Sahabah, and those who followed them, radiallahu anhu, Allah is pleased with them and they will make it to Al-Jannah. Because the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, advised us to follow them. Because we never see the Prophet ﷺ. The Quran came to us first from the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, first through As-Sahabah and then through all the generations. Al-Ilm, Al-Din, Al-Islam. Islam came to us through them. يعني كما يقول واحد منهم عبد الله بن مسعود, يعني عبد الله بن مسعود described, he's a Sahabi, one of the best Sahaba. He described them as أقلهم تكلفا, يعني أكثرهم صدقا وأعمقهم علما وأقلهم تكلفا. They were the most knowledgeable. They were the least when it comes to takalluf, like making things complicated. They were taking things easy. They were straightforward. They were the most sincere, the sincerest amongst everybody. In another quotation, it was said that Allah looked at the hearts of people, and He found the purest of all the hearts of people after the hearts of prophets, the hearts of the Sahaba, or the companions. So He chose them to be around the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Subhanallah, unfortunately, we see some people nowadays, يَتَقَرَّبُونَ Allah بِسَبِّ الصحابة. Some people, they call themselves Muslims, and they worship Allah by cursing the Sahaba. عليهم من الله ما يستحقون. May Allah Jalla curse them. So here are the hadith and ayat. Let's look at the life of these Sahaba, because they will be a presentation for the يعني خريجي مدرسة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. They graduated in the school of Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم. Islam did not come as a theory or as a book to hand it over to people. Actually, it came as a book, and then this book is implemented in the life of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, number one, and then in the life of regular people like me and you, in terms of they are not prophets. They were so excellent, but they were very regular people, not prophet or anything. Let's start by the first one of them, inshallah. And again, the book is SAAW حياة الصحابة, الرحمن, رأفت, الباشا. Saeed ibn Aamer. Today we start with Saeed ibn Aamer. Saeed ibn Aamer al-Jumahi. Yani I'm 100% sure that no less than half of us nowadays, I'm not, saying anything, but we don't know him. We don't know. If I ask you who is Saeed ibn Aamer, very, short, if any, piece of information that you might know about him. But he was, one of the Sahaba. Saeed ibn Aamer, if we start the first, snapshot in his life, he was amongst the Quraysh, with the Quraysh people. He's from Mecca. And he was attending the event of assassination of Khubayb ibn Adi. If you remember when we studied the Sirah of the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we talked about the Raji'a, Qissat al-Raji'a or kada, when some, tribes, they sent to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and they behaved like, we accepted Islam if you can send us somebody to teach us Islam. He sent them like 5 of the most prominent Sahaba, or teachers, or to teach them Islam. Amongst them was Khubayb ibn Adi. They were kidnapped. It was a trick, and they were kidnapped and they were sold. They ended up being in Quraysh, in Mecca, and it was shortly after Ghazwat Badr, the Battle of Badr, when the Kuffar, the non-Muslims, they were defeated, and so many of them were killed. So they wanted to take revenge from the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and from the Sahaba, from Muslims, in the form of these people. So they kidnapped Khubayb ibn Adi, if you remember his story, and they were taking him للصلب. He stayed for some time. We mentioned his story, if you remember, and they decided to kill him. They took him to crucify him in Mecca in front of everybody. And before crucifying him, they decided to, cut his body into pieces in a very awful way, to be like عبرة لمن وراءه وكذا. And he said, well, before you do that, let me just pray 2 rak'ah. And he prayed 2 rak'ah for Allah, and he made them, you know, he wanted to make them long, but he said, by Allah, after he finished, by Allah, I would love to make them as long as possible, you know, because this is the last time I'm, you know, praying, or I'm leaving now, I'm dying now. But I made them short because I'm afraid that you would say he is afraid of death. I'm not afraid of death. He said, well, do you like Muhammad in Medina to be in your place and you'll be set free? He said, by Allah, I don't want to be set free and Muhammad not to be killed in my place, not to be even, not for a thorn to hurt the Prophet not for a little thorn to hurt him, and I will be free for that. I don't like that. So subhanallah, amongst the people who were attending was Saeed ibn Aamer. Saeed ibn Aamer al-Jumahi, the one we're talking about today, he was with the Sahabah, not Muslim, and he witnessed all of that. And after they almost snatched the body of Khubayb ibn Ali, and they almost put him in the cross to start, you know, kill him. رفع بصره إلى السماء, and he made some, he looked high in the sky, and as if he's praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, Allahumma abligh nabiyyaka, wa Allah, let your prophet know about my situation now, and give salam, like he sent, you know, he is broadcasting a salam to the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and the people in Medina, Muslims in Medina, and the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was narrating it at the same time to the Sahaba, and he replied the salam, and he made the dua. He said, Allahumma اقتلهم أحصهم عددا واقتلهم بددا ولا تغادر منهم أحدا. Oh Allah, kill all of these people and don't leave anybody or let anybody live after that. He is making dua against them. That was so hard, left so much impression, so strong impression on Saeed, even though he was not Muslim. He kept thinking about it, dreaming about it day and night, about this person who was so strong, he was dying and he was not afraid, and he was speaking to them like so strong. He died for his faith, and he didn't want even to, see his love to the Prophet ﷺ. He didn't want Muhammad ﷺ to be in his place and he would be set free. He didn't want even him to be hurt with a thorn, a little hurt, and he would be set free. He didn't want that. So that affected him too much. Somebody who is dying, a Muslim who is dying, is actually giving lessons, teaching, and giving lessons to other people without even talking. That was the reason why Saeed ibn Aamer accepted Islam. He would accept Islam, he would leave Mecca, he would go to the Prophet ﷺ. After that, he would live with him, and he was so strong in his faith. He lived with the Prophet ﷺ until he dies, and then he left with Abu Bakr and Umar. He will die almost at the middle of the time of Umar, radiallahu anhu, around the year 19 or 20 of Hijrah, while Umar was the Amir after Abu Bakr, or the Khalifa after Abu Bakr. In the time of Umar, Saeed, he came to give him advice. He said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I advise you, and he gave him very, nice piece of advice to the Amir, to the leader, to the president, to the Khalifa, to take care of, al-Ra'iyya, the subject, the people, to give them the attention to, so many good things like that. It's actually kind of long nasiha. And he said, well, you got to be with me in that. I will appoint you as a ruler, as a governor of one of the cities or towns or something. He said, no, I don't want to be that. La taftinni. Do not put me into the fitna. He said, well, you assigned me to be the Khalifa, the leader, and now nobody wants to help me. Wallahi, by Allah, you have to be with me. You're going to be the leader of Hims. And he appointed him to be the leader of Hims, which is a district in Syria nowadays. And the people of Hims were not, there were certain districts like Al-Kufa, and Hims at this time was also known as Al-Kuwaifa. The people of these, especially two cities and other cities, they were not easy to deal with. So he sent them Saeed ibn Aamer. He was, the leader. He lived with them. Umar radiallahu anhu, one day he received, a list, like he sent somebody to, he was checking on all the governors and the affairs and what's going on in his, state, in his khilafah, dawlat al-khilafah yani. So he asked the people of Hims to send him a list of the poor people, so he will help them, send them money, whoever is in need or so. The people of Hims sent him the list. On the top of this list, guess who? Saeed ibn Aamer. He said, who is Saeed ibn Aamer? He said, they said, our Amir, our leader. He said, Baka Umar radiallahu anhu. يعني احنا رأسه وبكى. He cried, he wept. He said, subhanAllah, the Amir is one of the poor people. He said, yes. He sent money, he sent like 1,000 dinars for him or dirhams for him. And subhanAllah, Saeed got the money. And يعني, he was so sad when he got the money. He was talking with his wife and he said, الفتنة أتت إلينا في دهمتنا في بيتنا. The fitna, the test has come to us all the way to our home. He said, what happened? Did Amir al-Mu'mineen die? Did Umar die? He said, no. She said, what? So what? Did like the Muslims were defeated in any of them? He said, no. He said, well, you have to help me. She said, tell me what is it? What is the fitna? And I will help you to push it away from you. He said, he said, are you sure you're gonna help me push it away, or take it away from me? She said, yes. And he told her about the story that it's a money. Umar, send me a money. I want this. And he sent it, subhanAllah, to هذه الأرملة الفلانية، هذه للمعوزين، للفقراء. He sent to the poor, the widows, he sent them all. He sent them all. One day Umar radiallahu anhu came himself to check on the people of Hims amongst other territories and cities. And he asked the people, how is Saeed doing with you? Obviously, you will never find consensus amongst people, even if you send them Saeed ibn Zayd. Even if you send them the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was no consensus, like ijma'. So he was, as we see, one of the poorest, not taking anything. But this little group of people, they said, yeah, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he is, and they started, complaining. They said like 3 or 4 things against him. They said, well, one thing is he comes late to work. He doesn't show up in time. He comes لا يخرج حتى يتعالى النهار. He comes to us, to start his work as an Amir, as a leader, late in the late morning or something. And he also, one day in the month, he doesn't come at all. Nowadays we have two days a week, like 2 days off, and amongst all the other vacations. He has 1 day off, and they were complaining. They were complaining that he is not coming out at all at 1 day in the month. And the other thing is, they said he never comes to us, or we don't see him at night. He doesn't come to see, because Amir at this time, he was the judge, he was the mufti, he was leading them in prayer, giving the khutbah, doing almost everything. So he had a lot of things as far as the job. Inshallah, I will conclude because I don't want to leave anything. So they were complaining about these little things. So Umar, between him and Allah, he said, I know him. I hope that these things will be wrong, will not be right. So he asked him about the first thing. He said, well, I hope, or I was thinking never ever disclose this, but since you asked and since this is a complaint, one thing, I don't come up like late in the morning, say like 9 or 10 in the morning or something, because I don't have any servant, and أنا أعجن العجين. يعني ليس لأهل خادم فأنا أعجن العجين وكذا. He used to cook the food for them, prepare the food, and do everything and take care of the house. That's a leader. That's an Amir. We are not talking about we are talking about ناس من عجينة أخرى. يعني سبحان الله نسيج وحدهم. We are talking about a group of humans like me and you, but we are talking about Amir. Amir that if he wants, he would have whatever he wants. Like he was serving he was not helping, he was serving his family. He was cooking for them, he was preparing the food because he doesn't have a servant, a khadim. That's why he comes late to work, and he thought it's a responsibility on him. That's one thing. He said, how about the other one? Why don't you show up like at night if somebody needs you at night? He said, as far as the day, that's for the people, that's for my work, but for the night, that's for my Lord. That's dedicated for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why don't you show up for the 1 day in the month? He said also, this is something I didn't want to disclose or tell anybody about it, but since you asked about it, I do that because I have only one cloth that I take the time once a month to wash it and wait until it dries up, and then I wear it so I can come out for people. That's why I am not able to come out during the entire day. Subhanallah. رضي الله عن سعيد بن زيد رضي الله عن الصحابة سعيد ibn Aamer رضي الله عن الصحابة أجمعين. May Allah be pleased with them. This is the kind of generation that Muhammad, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, grow them up or bring them up or take care of them. فنسأل الله عز وجل أن يرضى عن الصحابة أجمعين وعنا معهم وأن يجعلهم يجعلنا ممن يتأسى بهم. اللهم آمين. May Allah عز وجل make us follow on their footsteps. اللهم امين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه اجمعين. جزاكم الله خيرا كثيرا.